Is that better? All right. Good afternoon. Welcome, and welcome back to the library. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sabine Schmidt. I'm an assistant librarian in the genealogy department upstairs on the 4th floor. If you haven't used our resources and are interested in the history of this area and or your family, please visit us. We're always happy to give you a tour and help you with your research. Some of our department's upcoming events this month in November, Veterans Day is coming up, and we have a series of events on Tuesday, November 11th, and Wednesday, November 12th, that have to do with Veterans Day. We have a program, a November events program, that's over there on the windowsill, so please take that for additional information. Before we get started, please note the feedback forms in your chairs. We want to encourage you to share your thoughts on our programming, and your feedback helps us plan future programs and helps us, find out how we're doing. There's a QR code on the sign over there if you want to use that. And we're also currently doing a survey on accessibility in the library and off-library services. There's another QR code for that if you want to fill out that form. So today's presenters are going to show us some really interesting ways to find out layers of history and technology and design, in this case about the Faubus House in Huntsville, which some of you may know, may have been to. Last year, the E. Fay Jones Conservancy was awarded a grant from the Division of Arkansas Heritage to produce a LiDAR, light detection and ranging scan of the Faubus House, designed in 1965 by renowned local architect Fay Jones. As you may know, he authored many buildings throughout Arkansas, including Thorncrown Chapel in Eureka Springs and the Mildred B. Cooper Memorial Chapel in Bella Vista. The Conservancy scanning team will give us a behind-the-scenes look at how the scan was performed and hosted online. The program was made possible in part by a grant from the Division of Arkansas Heritage, funded by your 1/8 of a cent conservation tax, Amendment 75. I'm delighted to introduce our presenters, Chloe and Kenneth Heidi, owners of the firm Catalpa Architects in Fayetteville, and Dan Richards of PB2 Architecture and Engineering in Rogers. Please help me welcome Chloe, Kenneth, and Dan.
Thank you, Sabina. Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today. And most importantly, thank you for your interest in the work of Fay Jones, in great architecture, and in the historic preservation of great architecture. Our presentation today will walk you through a project that we recently surveyed in an effort to create a comprehensive laser scan of one of E. Fay Jones's largest and most elaborate residences, the Orville Faubus House, which was originally designed in 1965 and completed in 1967. The house is currently owned by Jonathan Formanek, who founded the E. Fay Jones Conservancy in 2021. It serves as the headquarters of the Conservancy, whose mission is to preserve the work and legacy of Fay Jones through both architectural conservation and heritage advocacy. The Conservancy partners with owners of houses to advise and assist with restoration of Jones's architectural works, ensuring these structures remain true to their original design and condition. It also hosts architectural tours of E. Fay Jones designs in order to increase awareness of the beauty and significance of these works as one of Arkansas's most prominent architects. Our talk should be about 45 minutes in total, with some time at the end for any questions. First, we will tell you a bit about why we decided to undertake this project, and then give you a little biographical context around the individuals involved in the creation of this building. After covering the historical context, we will take you through a brief virtual tour of the house and discuss some of the architectural principles evident in the design. Toward the end, we will show you a demo of the laser scan that we created of the house and explain the process we went through in making it. So the goal of the scan was to make the architecture of Fay Jones more accessible to the public. Since the majority of Fay's work is residential and these houses are typically private and are not widely available for tours, we also sought to create a historical document which captures the house in all of its detail and can serve as a reference for architects, future researchers, and historians. The term we're using to describe this process is digital preservation. The original motivation behind this undertaking came from a story that emerged from the tragic fire that burned at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris on April 15, 2019. It is well known that the cathedral burned for over 15 hours, resulting in catastrophic destruction of its roof and main spire, as well as many of its windows and priceless interior elements. It is not as well known, however, that digital preservation played a critical role in the reconstruction efforts for the lost portions of the cathedral. Beginning in 2010, Dr. Andrew Tallon, an architectural historian and professor at Vassar College, began the process of carefully documenting every detail down to a tolerance of a few millimeters using laser scanning techniques. Dr. Tallon sadly passed away in 2018, shortly before the fire, but his foresight proved to be an invaluable contribution to architectural and world history. Jones's homes are particularly vulnerable. Due to the use of natural materials such as wood, fire remains the principal looming threat to the legacy of E. Fay Jones. A particularly relevant example is the Adrian Fletcher House, pictured here, designed by Jones and completed in 1956. Beginning in '73, former President Bill Clinton lived at the house, and despite being placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2013, it was tragically lost to fire of unknown origin in 2017. More recently, one of Jones's earliest designs, the Burdick House of 1950, which is located near Razorback Stadium in Fayetteville, was completely disfigured as it was renovated into an Airbnb, no longer recognizable as a Fay Jones design. Once a work of architecture such as this is lost, it is erased forever. This is why we believe digital preservation is important. Firstly, to create a quantitatively accurate resource for usage in the event of potential renovations and repairs, and in the worst-case scenario, to capture this architecture before it falls into the wrong hands or is destroyed by the elements.
Hi everyone, so now I'll give you a little background on both Fay Jones and Orville Faubus. E. Fay Jones was born in Pine Bluff, Arkansas in 1921. He grew up in El Dorado where his father ran a small restaurant. Growing up, Jones loved building things from salvaged lumber and packing crates. As a boy, he built an elaborate treehouse for himself, complete with a working brick fireplace and roll-up doors and screens. The galvanizing moment in Jones's life and career came in 1938 during a visit to the movie theater adjacent to his family's restaurant. Showing in the theater was a short color film by Popular Science featuring the recently completed Johnson Wax headquarters in Racine, Wisconsin, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. Jones was floored by the futuristic and visionary architecture and is quoted as saying, "Architecture took on a new meaning." From this moment forward, Jones knew that he wanted to be an architect. As there was yet no architecture program available at the University of Arkansas, Jones chose to study civil engineering, seeing it as being the next closest option. With war looming on the horizon in 1941, Jones joined the Navy as an airplane pilot. He was eventually posted to San Francisco and to the Pacific Theater. At war's end in 1945, Jones returned to Arkansas to find that the University of Arkansas was offering a new program, architecture. He graduated in the first class of 5 people in 1950 at the age of 29. He would go on to receive his master's degree at Rice University, followed by a few years of teaching at the University of Oklahoma from 1951 to 1953. It was there that he met the enigmatic architect and educator Bruce Goff. who greatly influenced Jones and ultimately facilitated his introduction to Frank Lloyd Wright. Jones would go on to visit Wright at one of his famous Easter gatherings in 1953 at Taliesin West in Scottsdale, Arizona, during which he would receive an invitation to work for Wright. Over the next year, he would work on Wright's only built tower, the Price Tower in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Upon returning to Arkansas, Jones kept in touch with Wright until his death in 1958. Jones would remain on the faculty at the University of Arkansas for the remainder of his career and would go on to win the American Institute of Architects Gold Medal for his work in 1990, 52 years after seeing the film about the Johnson Wax headquarters at that little theater in El Dorado. So Orville Faubus was the client for this house. He was born in 1910 and was the 36th governor of Arkansas. He was born in Madison County and raised in a modest cabin. His father was a self-educated farmer and fervent opponent of capitalism. In his youth, Orville attended Commonwealth College near Mena, which was a radical socialist labor school aimed at combining education and cooperative community. As a young man, Faubus served in World War II as an Army intelligence officer, completing 5 major campaigns in Europe, including the Battle of the Bulge. At age 28, Faubus entered politics, joining the Democratic Party. He held 6 terms as governor, remaining in this position longer than any other person to date. Orville Faubus is infamous for his role in the integration crisis of 1957 at Central High School in Little Rock. This event received negative attention across the nation, and today we look back at Faubus's decisions with regret. Despite these events, however, Faubus remained relatively popular, with the majority of Arkansans viewing him as a moderate. He went on to serve as governor for another decade, until leaving the office undefeated in 1967. Faubus left office with hopes of expanding his career into a Senate run. With this in mind, he commissioned the design and construction of an estate in Huntsville for hosting dignitaries and politicians. For this task, he hired a talented architect associated with the University of Arkansas, E. Fay Jones. Ultimately, Faubus's Senate bid did not materialize, as his life after the governorship was beset with hardship and misfortune. In 1969, only 2 years after the completion of the house, he and his first wife, Alta, divorced. In 1976, his only child passed away due to an overdose at age 37. Faubus's financial fortunes declined after he left office as well. And after several unsuccessful attempts to reclaim the governorship, he eventually took a position as the general manager for Dog Patch USA, an Ozarks-themed amusement park located in Newton County. He was eventually forced to sell the house in 1989 in order to pay off his debts.
So we are now going to discuss some of the architectural principles involved in the design of the house, as well as take a virtual tour and see what these principles look like when built. The house is situated in a location east of Huntsville known as Governor's Hill. This property was named as such as it was previously owned by the 8th governor of Arkansas, Isaac Murphy, who famously voted against secession from the Union in 1861. Construction began in the summer of 1965 and was completed by July of 1967. The house dramatically straddles the edge of a 30-foot tall bluff and was placed here in order to provide an unobstructed view to downtown Huntsville directly to the west. The concrete foundation of the house is anchored on the solid rock. In total, the house is 7,350 square feet. It is a very long and proportionately narrow house at 216 feet from the north to the south end. So you can see here, this is the north side of the site, and so from here to here, the house is a little over 216 feet long. The entire house is designed on a modular grid, which is 32 inches by 32 inches. This dimension of 32 inches is clever because it works with typical construction materials, such as the spacing of wall studs at 16 inches and also multiplies easily to units of 4 foot, 8 foot, 12, and 16 foot on whole or half grid increments. Jones used this system for the majority of his residential work. The Faubus house is an example of organic architecture, which was a term coined by Frank Lloyd Wright. Some of the qualities of organic architecture are the use of natural materials, the integration of a building with its surroundings, and the blurring of boundaries between interior and exterior spaces. You will also see a subtle Japanese influence in the design, as both Wright and Jones had an affinity for and drew inspiration from traditional Japanese architecture. This house even features 2 pairs of rice paper screen doors. So before we show you the laser scan, we wanted to give you a quick virtual tour of the house so that you can understand its layout better. We created this tour from panoramic images that we captured with a 360 camera while on site. And just for the sake of clarity, this is a separate document from the actual laser scan itself, and this will give you a sense of what it's like to be on the ground, on your feet, really just taking a tour of the house as if you were there. So this is the approach to the house from the drive, and as you'll notice, there is no garage, but rather a carport or porte cochere, which appears to be an extension of the main roof of the house, which is resting on stone pillars. You will notice here that there is no visible front door upon first approach. Jones would often hide the main entry in order to provide a sense of procession and privacy. You also see here the unique detailing of the eaves. Jones did not use gutters on his houses, and instead used a combination of an angled fascia and copper drip edge. Here's a detail of what that looks like. So now as we move further toward the house, we start to come under the carport. And in the carport ceiling, we are presented with a hint of what is to come on the interior. This would be an example of how Jones is utilizing the principles of organic architecture by blurring the distinction between interior and exterior, in this case by extending the interior ceiling to the outside of the building. Pay attention as we move indoors to the continuation of this pattern. The front facade, which you can see now, which faces east, is fairly quiet and offers a somewhat modest presentation. It offers a sense of privacy as it has relatively few large windows. The exterior wall materials are local fieldstone and mahogany plywood, which has been stained a light orange-brown. The roof is covered in cedar shingles. You can also see here the subtle Japanese influence, which is primarily visible in the low hip roofs and broad overhangs. This modest exterior presentation will serve as a counterpoint to the grand architectural orchestration that is waiting for us on the interior, and this was a theme that is found in many of Jones's houses. So now we find the front entrance and we move into the main entry of the house. So this is the primary entry. There are actually 2 entries on this house, and this was the one intended to be used by the majority of visitors. This house was intended for hosting events and dinners for politicians and the well-to-do. Directly ahead of us is the sewing room, which was a room specifically requested by Alta Faubus. It has operable panels facing the entry and the formal living room so that Alta could be aware of the comings and goings, but could also choose privacy if she wished. You may also notice that the entry is rather compact. The ceilings at this location actually measure around 7 feet. This is not an accident, but is rather a technique Jones is using to heighten the architectural procession using a concept called compression and release. This was a technique often used by Frank Lloyd Wright, and the idea is that small makes big feel bigger and dark makes light feel lighter. Movement through the house is organized along a 180-foot-long linear axis running north to south. By walking along this axis, you can reach any part of the house, and as you do so, you feel space compressing and expanding around you. The long hallway to our left leads to a coat closet in the bedroom wing of the house. And so, moving to our right leads us into the main living wing of the house. As we now move into the great room, we feel the surprise of an upward expansion of space, which is opening outward toward the west. The roof and ceiling are really important for creating this architectural effect of expansion and lightness. The ceiling itself is covered in cream-colored Humasote paneling, which is made from recycled paper fiber, which is compressed under high temperature. It has a subtle texture as well as an acoustic effect. The joints in the panels are covered with the same hardwood battens which we previously saw outside in the carport. And you can see how this rhythm of these battens continues through a glass window above the ridge, or right below the ridge, and into the carport. I would argue once again that we see the influence of Japanese architecture filtered through Frank Lloyd Wright, and Jones has reinterpreted the aesthetic of the tatami flooring system and placed it above our heads. The great room contains the formal living room to our left, as well as the formal dining room to our right. The dining area contains a large table beneath an elaborate wood chandelier, both designed by Jones. As we move through the great room, the floors step down, which increases the height of the ceiling and the sense of expansion. We can see here a massive stone chimney with one of 4 unique fireplace designs. You can also see here the intricate built-in seating and cabinetry surrounding the den. These drawings are section details that are being cut through the stairs, and they show the relationship of the cabinetry, the seating, and the steps, which are all conceived together as an architectural moment. So now looking toward the west, we can see that there are no columns in the corners, and instead we have large glass corner windows. This is another example of Jones's attempt to destroy the box by dissolving its corners, therefore also creating ambiguity between interior and exterior space. So now as we move through the double doors at the far west side of the great room, we come to what is the most iconic and daring moment within the architecture, the 28-foot-long cantilevered balcony. This balcony has no supports beneath it and is fully cantilevered over the edge of the bluff, using a tapered concrete construction system with an incredible amount of steel reinforcing. This drawing here is a structural sheet, and it shows the form of the cantilevered balcony and how the concrete slab tapers down to a thinner and thinner point to reduce weight. It also shows the reinforcing and how it's all connected to a large concrete pier which rests on top of the bedrock. At the outermost point of the balcony, the forest floor is over 30 feet below, and you really feel as if you are amongst the tree canopy. Chloe's going to bungee jump down, and so here's an image that we took from below down at the forest floor, and you can see the rock outcropping, the bluff, and you can also see that grand cantilever above. While I would love to take you through the entire house, we have only so much time together this afternoon, and it is quite a large building. The house is currently open for tours, and I would encourage anyone interested to take a day trip to Huntsville to experience this architecture in person. You can sign up for individual or group tours online at the E. Fay Jones Conservancy's website, www.efayjonesconservancy.org. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the process of creating a LiDAR scan of this project. So what is LiDAR scanning? LiDAR stands for Light Detection and Ranging. LiDAR scanning is a technology that measures distances using infrared laser pulses. By timing how long each laser pulse takes to bounce off of an object and return in millionths of a second, LiDAR creates a precise 3D map of an environment. It is widely used in self-driving cars, drones, archaeology, and mapping. LiDAR scanning is accurate down to a few millimeters. In order to create a thorough model, it is important to scan each space from multiple angles, so that the scanner and software can cross-reference and triangulate each point relative to the other ones. The model that we have assembled consists of 362 scans, with a total of about 1.5 billion points. It was completed over the course of 12 weekends and several evenings of compiling and editing on the computer. Itself is known as the point cloud, and the computer stores the geospatial coordinates of each one of these discrete points relative to an origin point. The biggest challenge to scanning the project was not necessarily the size of the house, but the intricacy of the architecture. Jones's buildings are notorious for their detail and complexity, much of which you have seen is high above your head. For this reason, it was necessary to take multiple scans, not only at the ground level, but also at a higher ceiling elevation. This ensured that we were able to capture both the top and bottoms of elements like beams, shelves, soffits, and light fixtures. Despite the number of points in the scan, LiDAR scans are purely composed of points and tend to be rather lightweight for most computers to handle. Because of this, we've been able to upload this interactive point cloud to the web for anyone to view using an open source software called Potri. You can view this online at the E. Fay Jones Conservancy's website as well, and we will provide links to it toward the end of the presentation. The software gives you the ability to fly around the model, to take measurements, and to create section boxes in order to cut into the model and view it from different directions. Dan is now going to give you a quick demo of the point cloud that we created from the 362 scans. So one of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to trim the scan down, and we actually were able to capture quite a bit of the surrounding environment, some of the forest. We were able to capture the side of the bluff. And the first thing Dan is going to do is sort of just trim the point cloud down to be a little bit closer into the house so we can see it better. Now you might be noticing already that this is quite a bit different from the virtual tour that we already showed you guys. And the main difference is that we can interact with this scan as if we're almost looking at it from a bird's eye view. And it's really sort of an objective model that we can look at from any direction, from the top, from the side, from inside, from outside. So So those red dots that we're just showing, those were the positions, so that the software actually registers and remembers the positions of each of the scans, and we can show those, and we can jump from position to position as well. But let's just first do a sort of fly around the outside once Dan gets this cropped back down where he wants it. That looks good. And then I think we can toggle that off, and then let's see if we can just kind of fly around outside and look at the roof line and see a little bit of the detail of the eaves and some of the windows. So this is the bedroom suite of the house. This is where the master wing would be. and you can see some of the railings, and we can see how the back side of the house is actually more glazed and has a lot more glass than the front side of the house. And Faye was really trying to open us up toward nature and really direct our attention toward nature. So now we're moving along. There's a balcony that runs along the entire width of the west side of the house. You can also see that being a point cloud, this model has a sort of a ghost-like quality to it because it is comprised entirely of points. It's not comprised of planes. It's not technically solid in any real sense, but the point data is so dense that it does still appear to be solid, but it does still somewhat have something of a ghost-like quality to it. So this is that cantilever, and it looks like it's slightly being cut off, so pull that back out, and then you can see how far that really extends out there. They're just finishing up the construction real quick, but there's the side of the bluff, and we did scan underneath and down all the way to the bottom of the bluff down here. And now as we come back around, let's go back to where we started near the carport. So this is really where we started our virtual tour from. So you can see the similarities, but also the differences in these two types of models. And there is a funny little Easter egg, I guess, that we discovered after we finished the scanning. It might be a little hard to see today, but there was actually a stray kitty that lives on the property, and he was in one of the scans, so we like to call it our cat scan.
It's right there.
You can kind of see his back, and in some of these you can actually see his tail waving, and the scanner captured the movement of his tail, which was kind of neat.
You can see he's there.
Yeah, that's the
And he's
tail.
there.
So now let's go ahead and fly around the inside and look at a couple interior details. Or actually, before we do that, how about we show them how we raise the roof?
Oh, so that's
Raise the roof or remove the roof?
Remove the roof. Lower the roof. The roof's coming off one way or another.
okay. So that's just
So this is one of the cool things about this being sort of a model that we can look at from any position, but we can really start to slice and dice this to understand more about the architecture, the relationships of the spaces. Things that are hard to comprehend from walking through the space become more apparent in this sort of view. I'm going to bring us a little bit closer in on some of the elements in the great room or in the den, maybe. We do also have the ability to measure, and I would encourage you to try that out if you are inclined to take a look at the web version of this. There are measurement tools in there, and you can check dimensions of anything. You just have to make sure you zoom close enough into whatever point that you want to measure to and from. So why don't we also show how we can do sort of it's like a CT scan where we can kind of cut a section going crossways along the entire length of the house and move it and see different spatial, sectional relationships that are not really that readily apparent.
so just have to go to this one. Let's go to
This is my favorite part here. Watch this. So can we zoom in a little closer to the house too, just so we can see some more detail? So now we can really look and we can see all the different spatial relationships that Faye was orchestrating as he designed this project. And we can even see the relationship of the house to the bluff. And we can take measurements of these heights or these different spaces. While we have the point cloud open, is there anything that anyone wants to see in specific? Okay, then I think we're good.
I wanted to mention the challenge of scanning the glass and scanning the mirrors.
Sure.
So Since the mirrors in the glass are reflective, when the scanner shoots the infrared laser at it, it thinks it's going off in space. It doesn't come back to the scanner. So part of the process is cleaning up the laser scan because it gets a lot of artifacts through like the mirrors in the glass. And so since phase designs have a lot of that reflective surface in it, that was one of the challenges. That's one of the reasons that we have a lot of the drapes pulled in each room, is to prevent the reflections and the transparency of the glass from messing up the scan.
I don't know, it's like really evident just out around, like you'll sometimes see a copy like off at an angle, like floating out in space. And so there was a lot of cleaning involved. Software is not quite there to where it can detect reflections and clean them. You still have to do that yourself. And so had to go through 362 scans one at a time and just clean them. So.
The instrument is right over there. That's the Faro S70 scanner that we used. I think on average it took, maybe 5 to 7 minutes a scan?
The interior scans were taking 4 minutes a scan. Outside, they went up as high as 8 minutes, just for additional detail. It's capturing about 1 million points a second. It's also capturing a series of, it takes 78 pictures, and it uses those to colorize the points. The points by themselves, because they're infrared, they look like, this is what a non-colorized point cloud looks like. It's just all grayscale. So the scanner actually has like a 360 camera that it talks to, and it captures, I think it's 74 pictures in quick succession, and it then maps those to the points, and that's how we're able to get color onto these points. But you have to offload it from the scanner onto like a machine for it to process and map all the RGB values.
In some workflows, then you take this point cloud and you can make a mesh out of it. So you triangulate between all the points and it makes a surface. So then it's something that can just be rendered in the computer. However, in this case, a lot of the detailed parts that Faye included, they're so detailed that we would have to get up close to them and take scans from all kinds of directions. And so we thought the point cloud represented the space better, because if we tried to mesh it, there are places where there are holes.
Well, detail gets lost.
And the detail is lost.
There are a couple instances where, like here, you can see set the scanner down on the ground to capture just all the ins and outs, like the undersides of like this table, the chairs. And so just every so often, like every 20 scans, I'd set the machine on the ground and do a scanning up to capture just all that intricate detail that you would miss if it was at just, most of these are at, kind of 4 feet off the ground, but there's a few like this that are down kind of at worm's eye view, so you can capture all that, the intricate, carpentry on the woodwork and whatnot.
Yeah, and the places where you wouldn't have a scan, you'd end up having like a big hole on the bottom. So like, for example, if we hadn't scanned the underside of that table, you would just not have any data on the underside of the table.
But this is like, just the actual like X, Y, Z, just the actual dimensions of the structure. It's like if anything were to happen to the house, we've got this all just here, just in this point cloud format. You can pull this into a drawing platform like Revit, pull drawings out of it. And, if we ever had to remake or if you ever had to replace anything on the home, you've got a really accurate starting point. And the beauty of this versus like a tape measure, you've got all the color information. You've got a lot of just nuance that, a tape measure or a camera is going to omit. So, and granted, this is very time intensive, and this particular machine's about 10 years old. There are newer, faster machines always coming out that would capture time down to like 30 seconds per scan instead of 3-4 minutes per scan. But this machine is, accurate to within 1/16 of an inch on average for this it was like between a 1/16 and 3/16 of an inch from one side to the other for this particular model. Whereas with a tape measure, it would be 3 people with a clip, one person writing down all the measurements, and you get from one side to the other, and you're lucky if it's within, 6 inches, on something this long and narrow, like 200 feet. Whereas this is, it's decently accurate.
All right, great. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about the future of our scanning project and also some acknowledgements.
Do you want me to switch to the gray house?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I should mention, I'll just go ahead and start talking while Dan pulls that up. We consider that this project is a springboard for a larger effort to document the built work of E. Fay Jones, and we have hopes and plans to scan more of his projects. We recently completed a scan of another Fay Jones house in Fayetteville, which is available to rent for the weekend. It's called The Gray, and it's near the stadium. It was designed and built in 1953 and was recently renovated by one of Fay's apprentices, Dave McKee, and his family. So thanks to the generosity of Alice and Dave, we were able to get in there for about a week, and we also produced a pretty high-resolution scan of this much more modest but still very impactful design that Fay created.
This one actually has the images with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not just panoramic images. There's actually, like LiDAR points underneath these images. So you can, it's,
Those panoramas are used to colorize. You can see that some of them are overexposed, right? But that's kind of averaged out.
it's like if we were to mesh it, it would average it out, and it would be. But had to scan this like at night, so the scanner is trying really hard against. It doesn't. So these machines don't do the best with artificial light. With sunlight, they're great. Artificial light, not so much. So,
We're
yeah.
able to do a sort of section cut of this house as
Oh,
well.
yep. So we can. Here it comes. Yeah, it's thinking. Here it goes.
Yeah, all the colors in this view, each one is a different scan. So each scan is colorized, so the points that belong to each scan are a different color.
Yeah, so there you can see just the typical section of this house. There's a really long, excellent clear story move where he kind of breaks the roof apart and pops the ridge over the top of the other ridge.
Let me point that out. Here, it's
We
right there.
can also just go into 3D and just.
So it really is a tool, it's a powerful tool to reveal spatial relationships and also reveal the relationships of structures to their sites.
Can you fly inside the house?
Oh, yeah.
You can see that's the entry, and then the kitchen, and that's the grand living room with a great view of nature through the windows. And that clear story up above your head. But this design is a lot more compact than the Faubus house.
downstairs.
We also plan to put this point cloud on the Conservancy's website too, so you could explore it on your own. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up, Dan. Give last few comments.
All right. Come on.
If you want, you could just tab back Chrome. So we just wanted to make a few acknowledgements to wrap things up. We'd like to give an enormous thanks to a few individuals and groups that made this project possible. Firstly, the Arkansas Department of Heritage. And we'd also like to thank Jonathan Formanek, who is the current owner of the Faubus House and who has generously allowed us to invade his personal space weekend after weekend in order to complete this project. We'd like to thank Rana Prekir, who is an encyclopedia of knowledge about both the Faubus House and property as well as about Faye Jones, and who has facilitated many opportunities and assisted us at every step of the way. And we'd like to thank Dan, who without his help, this would not have been possible. Sure.
There is a microphone up there, but I can use the handheld audience microphone if you prefer to ask a question that way. Anyone?
Can you use this, your data cloud to create a 3D model,
A physical model you would probably want to create a digital model first, and then you could make a physical model off of those dimensions. There are a couple different ways to do it. The way that is most common right now in the AEC industry is to model in place over the cloud, almost as if it's ghosted in and you're using it for a reference. But you can directly, if it's not critical that you're going to be having your dimensions maintained, and maybe, let's say you're a filmmaker and you want to scan an environment and then give it to your VFX artists, and then they're going to paint something on it or need a 3D model of it to make something blow up, you can mesh the point cloud directly, and then your 3D artists could begin to work with it that way. But typically in architecture, you would model in place using building information modeling techniques, and would just use the point cloud itself as a reference. One of the things that's nice about it is it's kind of like having a complete as-built. One of the things that we've found before is that we'll drive down maybe even a couple hours somewhere to do an as-built and take dimensions of an existing structure, and we'll come back and realize we forgot a dimension. Well, when you scan it, it's not really a problem. You can take any dimension you need as long as you've got all your scans, which you can see pretty readily. So it's a little more advantageous in that way too.
I have a question that may be related to what you just said. So if there were historical structures that are falling apart, partially collapsed, of which there are many in Arkansas, would this technology be useful in creating sort of a speculative image of the whole as it was?
Well, it would be a starting place. And I don't think you'd be able to necessarily turn back the clock using this, but it would allow you to see the building exactly as it is right now. And that's advantageous because when you're doing a manual measurement by hand, like Dan was mentioning earlier, things that are slightly out of skew can sometimes be hard to notice. And this will tell you exactly when something is not perfectly plumb or square. So it'll give you a better starting point than if you just went out and measured it on your own.
If you cut a section through the building, it would reveal, like, if a cantilever is sagging, how much it's sagging.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'd be a way to measure that.
I'll let Dan speak to that.
So cost for the machine or just somebody to come out and do? For like a, I guess like 1,800 square foot, 2-bedroom home, for like a 1/4 inch or less, between a 1/4 and an 1/8 inch accuracy, that's probably, just the scanning and putting the model together, that's probably like $1,500 to $2,000. But then to actually kick out a set of like drawings, that's a little more, that's like $3,000-4,000 total. Just for someone to go through, and we're not quite there yet for where it'll just spit out drawings for you, but that's coming. I can say that. But yeah, so just for like a basic like scan for insurance purposes on like a 2,000 square foot home would probably be $1,500 to $2,000.
I'll just say that, I don't know, preaching to the choir here, I'm quite sure, and we all know the importance of this, but I mean, I hope you're really proud of what you've done here. Yeah. Super important.
In terms of being behind the scenes, it took us a couple attempts to get it right. Not that Dan didn't know what he was doing, but it was such a big house that we had to try to find a way to optimize our time. So we took a couple different approaches to try to scan faster, and it didn't really work out. So we ended up just having to scan it at normal resolution.
Speed,
Yeah.
We tried to cut some corners early on scanning without having it take any pictures, having it just in grayscale, which we have a very lovely grayscale model, but there's no there's no color information attached to it.
It really doesn't jump to life until you add that color in, and you can
It's-
distinguish
It's more,
parts.
it's more accurate than the model we just showed. And if you needed it for reconstruction, it's gonna be better than the colorized model. But, it's black and, it's not even, it's like grayscale, so it's hard to judge distances and whatnot, looking at it or connect with it, I guess.
The strategy there was to start with the grayscale and then add on what's called photogrammetry, where you take a bunch of photos and you can create a model from the photos as well, and then overlay that onto the
Yeah, it's like
point cloud.
It's like the grayscale point cloud is like scaffolding for all the photos you take. And it worked, but there were holes everywhere. It would
Yeah.
work really well in one spot, but not so well in another spot. So we had this kind of half-finished looking, colorized point cloud at the end. It's like, well, we just need to scan it all just with the old tried and true, just internal, like camera on the scanner. And that's what we ended up doing, so.
Yeah.
Is each scan position a spherical scan?
Oh, yeah, it's almost like, so you can see the machine here, and I can actually just, okay, there's like a mirror that's spinning in here. So this mirror is spinning incredibly fast, but then the whole machine itself spins. It's almost like a pizza cutter that projects out, and everywhere that pizza cutter hits, you've got it's like a pizza cutter that's like turning, but it's capturing the whole room. But because of that, you've got line of sight problems, so that's why we have to move the machine around. So we can capture, everything that we line of sight missed in this first position, we'll capture in these subsequent positions. In a room like this, I'd capture 3 scans, not counting, I'd have one in the doorway, but then I'd have 3 more just in the room itself. And then this room would be scanned, unless you wanted to get above the ceiling. Then that big monster tripod you saw in some of those pictures, I bring that in and pop a tile and start scanning above the ceiling. So, but that's pretty much it. It's kind of a,
What's its range?
this one can scan up to about 100 feet in either direction that I trust. It's like, so 100 feet out from this machine, so about 200 feet, in diameter is what I would trust this machine to, capture. Beyond that, accuracy starts to fall off because, it's the points close in are extremely accurate. So within 30 feet, it's a millimeter. 60 feet, it's about 4 millimeters. 100 feet, it's like 8. And at that point, you're approaching like 3/8 of an inch. And it's like, okay, at that point, that's when I, And so a lot of those outdoor scans, I had trimmed a lot of that excess data out. There was just noise.
All right, thank you so much. I learned a lot. And I'm definitely going to check out the website, so thank you, and thank you for coming.
If anybody would like a brochure for the Father's House, I have them here.
All right,
So,
just pass them around. And if you don't mind, fill out the form, the feedback form that you have in your chair, and I can provide those over here. Thank you so much for coming. And I'll get the next one.
If you'd like to be on the email list, there's also a place in the back to write down your email, and so we'll add you to the email list. But yeah, thank you everyone for being here.